getting to true freedom in life, a life where you have real options, real choices, real sovereignty over what you do, how you do it, where you do it, when you do it. That's what I call true freedom. It's not retirement date. That can happen to have freedom way before you sell or leave your active income, profession, career, business, whatever it is. Having freedom along the way, I believe, is one of the missing key elements of our society today. We've been built on a society that has rewarded strong work ethic, go to work, put in the time, the years, over many, many decades to end up with a retirement of some kind where then you get to go live your life. And that started back in the industrial age when people were working the factory lines and the owners of the companies would provide a pension when people worked many, many decades like indentured servants to put in the time, only to leave at the end of many decades and have a pension that they could live off of the rest of their life. That's not the world we live in today at all. There is so much mobility and change and dynamism that nobody is getting the gold watch or the pension anymore. Every individual, whether you're a business owner or employee, you've got to be taking care of yourself in some form or fashion. And that has not been sewn into the fabric of our society. Certainly from a financial acumen standpoint, it's not taught in schools. It's not taught anywhere. People who learn it have to kind of self-learn it and go through either through mentors and guides, or you just learn it the hard way and figure out, I've got to take care of myself. For those who have gone through and gained a skill set through education, training, licensure, professional practice owners, doctors, dentists, engineers, architects, lawyers, CPAs, have a built-in ability to make more income than the average person. Trade time for money is what we call it. And that's how we're built in society. That's what we're taught to do in school. Go through and get the highest degrees you can to get into the higher level schools, get the training to go into some staid, stable profession, and that's going to serve you well for your life. And for many, many years, that's always been it. There's been generations who, the first child who got to go to college was a big step up. And I grant you, that was a big step up. Today, that's not really the North Star anymore. Now, I'm not against higher education at all. I'm not against that because we need people in this world who have the skill sets, the detail, the ability to go into a micro-specialized arena and do what they do. And many of the people I work with, I came from the same arena. Dentistry, a very precise, highly technical profession that serves people at a high level. And that's important. We need people. But is that the actual path to freedom? That's what I'm bringing up today. And I will say it's not. The path to freedom is a mindset and a discipline and a behavior that has to precede one's ability to make money. Oh yes, you can make all the money you want to. You can gain the greatest skills ever and solve big problems. But as long as you are having to trade time for that money, that transactional income, you're never truly free. I don't care if you're at $500 an hour or $1,000 an hour or $1,500 an hour, you're never free. And why is that? Because human behavior is that the greater the income that we're able to derive from our work, our efforts, the more our lifestyle rises up with it. It is just normal behavior. It's not the amount of money that makes us happy. It's the contentment of really the life and the freedom and the choices and options. When you have freedom and options in your life and you can spend time and make the memories with the people you care about, at the end of the day, that's always going to be the most important. But when we're living our lives, that's not it. We're measuring ourselves against the metrics, the measurements of society and a particular industry. Because society says you've made it if you live in a certain locale, you live in a certain type of house, a neighborhood, you drive certain kinds of cars, you belong to certain kinds of clubs or organizations, you send your kids to XYZ private schools perhaps, or you have vacation homes in certain resorts, or you name it. There's all kinds of metrics, and that's what people say is like, you've made it. You've done really, really well. In a business, it could be what your top line revenue is. It could be how many offices you have. It could be how many employees you have. Again, all kinds of metrics. Having freedom comes down to, in essence, living off of a smaller percentage of what you make your entire life. Because most people don't. And I've got so many case studies that I have personally worked with to see this very phenomenon happen. I have people I've worked with that came from dentistry that have lifestyle burn rates. I call them monthly burn rates, a freedom number. The freedom number, what does it take to produce the income for your family's lifestyle, whatever that is. What is it on a monthly basis? You've got to take all the numbers, all the expenses you have that produce the lifestyle that you and your family have determined is right for you. You've built up to that, whatever it is, wherever you live, whatever your expenses are, wherever the kids go to school, whatever cars you drive. All those expenses have become accrued because you've had the ability to keep your head above water and make the money to produce that. And then maybe make more money over time, which again, that's a blessing. But we never are free as long as it requires our time to create the income to produce that lifestyle. What's the answer? As quickly as possible, and this is what I really try to help focus young people on, is don't let your increased income, because you went to school, you got the skill sets, you put in the time, you've got the tenure, you've got the experience, you're solving problems, you're valuable, which is super important. And so you get paid commensurately based on the value you provide to the world, to society, to your business, to your clients, your customers. That's a great measurement of how well you're doing. But don't let your lifestyle stay in tandem with that. Or many times the lifestyle exceeds that because the feeling is, well, I can always catch back up because I can earn more money, work a little bit harder, be a little bit more productive, and I can catch back up. And then it's this seesaw back and forth until one day you look and say, what's my lifestyle burn rate? And it's way up here. Where way up here is, it doesn't matter. It's a relative number, because even the most well, I shouldn't say wealthy, because wealth is a different derivation than rich. But people that feel or look to be rich often are those people who are on that treadmill, who are just this close to having some life event or something in the economy trigger a downfall, because everything's built on credit, debt, and the ability to keep making the money. True wealth is where you have optionality, where you actually have wealth in assets. Now, yes, you're an asset. As long as you are wanting, willing, and desiring to do work and solve problems in some form of capacity, and you make money, transactional money from that, do it. Do it. That's your prerogative. But if you have to do it, then that's not freedom. So when you have the assets outside of yourself, other assets, it could be a passive interest in businesses. You're not the operator, but you have a passive interest. You have equity in a business. Certainly real estate's the big one that a lot of people look at as alternatives. I've got assets in real estate, and I'm not the manager, but I get returns from someone else managing different assets I've invested in. You can do that. You can do that in the stock market with dividend-paying stocks. You know, I've invested money here, and I get these distributions paid out on dividends. Whatever it takes to produce your freedom number, your lifestyle burn rate, that's what you need to, over time, build up in assets. So over time, you're less dependent upon your work. And now you have optionality. When you get to the point where you have met or exceeded your lifestyle burn rate, your freedom number, by other investments, you're free. You're free. And that's the best feeling ever. And you don't have to wait until you're at retirement age. In fact, the fallacy is, when I get to retirement age, well, it'll just be there, because I have a financial advisor who has been working with me for years, and they help me put money into the market. I put money into my 401k, and they say just keep putting money in and dollar cost average, and when I'm 65, they'll have it all there for me. That's a game I wouldn't play, and I'm not denouncing financial advisors. It's just they have a certain menu that they have to sell to put money or to put food on their plate, and many times it's not necessarily always in your best interest. I'm just saying, you've got to be your own financial advocate. You have to be, and more so today than it ever was in the past, because the model, the economy has changed and will continue to change, and it's not going to be what we've seen in the past. Being more dynamic and diverse and knowledgeable and connected to your money outside of your primary business is going to be key. So back to my point, how to determine your freedom number, because this is where people get it wrong. When I ask people, what's your freedom number? What's your lifestyle burn rate? They estimate. They just estimate. They'll just give me numbers anywhere from $20,000 a month. Oh, I had somebody all the way up to $120,000 a month. These are small business owners. And the fact is, most people have no clue. They just make up a number that sounds good, and they beef it up a little bit just to make sure they're good. Until you're ready to do the work, and actually with your spouse, and maybe you have a software program, or you have a accountant or a bookkeeper, or you do it yourself, which is not the way I recommend, but somebody's got to do it for you, is actually get down and know your numbers. Now, your freedom number, that lifestyle burn rate number, is dynamic. It will change. Certainly will change as you are growing your family. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be in a position someday to buy a bigger house, or you need a bigger vehicle or more vehicles or whatever it might be. That's up to you. But you've got to know and be able to put a peg on that freedom number really at all times, and revise it at all times, whether it's going up or maybe the kids are all grown and gone and you're leveling out. Except for the cost of living, inflation going up, you might be leveling out. You may not need to keep pushing that number. But knowing what that number is the key to developing your game plan, your blueprint. Because once you know what your number is, the number you're shooting for, then you can reverse engineer. Then you can say, okay, how much capital do I need to have invested in XYZ, any different kinds of investment sectors, whatever you choose. Could be a combination of financial market sectors and alternatives, whatever suits you, but understanding where to put your capital, particularly when you're trying to have those assets, those investments, produce the income, not just growth. Growth is great, but the actual income, when you need the income to release you from the liability and obligation of having to trade time for dollars. When you reach that number, you're there. Now, understand that the more you can keep that number nominal or relatively lower and never getting up to the point where you're pushing your actual earning capacity, then you're going to get to that freedom number a lot faster. And when you do that, everything, and I'll say to you, everything in your life expands. All four of the other freedoms, starting with financial freedom, that's where financial freedom comes from. Then you've got time freedom, you've got freedom of relationships, sowing the relationships you want to sow into, and removing relationships that have no purpose or meaning to you. You're not bound to have to do anything with certain people anymore. Insurance companies could be one of those. Your health. So many people put off health because they're just too busy. Too busy doing what? Trading time for dollars on the treadmill, turning. Because, well, I have to make hay while the sun shines. That's what everybody tells me. I got to grind it out while I can. Bad move. You're going to burn yourself out. And you're never going to really get to the point where you have that freedom. You're still going to be pushing it down the road to age 62, 65, 68, 70, and still not feel comfortable or with certainty or confidence that you can actually pull the trigger and take time off. And wait until you're 70, way too late. And that's the average age by the American Dental Association that dentists are retiring today. That's crazy. That's crazy. But again, it's human behavior. It's psychology. It's what we've been taught for so many years. This is the way you do it. It doesn't have to be that way. I've done it in my own life back in my 40s, and I've helped hundreds of other doctors and their spouses do the same thing way before the, quote, retirement age. In fact, we've allowed people to remove themselves from their practice, or at least the operational aspects of being chairside 4 days a week or whatever it's been, to reducing that to make it more minimal. Because why? They've got the freedom of choice and to live and work on their own terms. It makes such a huge difference. So how do you do it? How do you get that freedom number dialed in? You've got to play a little game with yourself. I call it day one. What's day one? You have sold your business, your practice, or maybe you had a disability that forced you out of the practice. And so it's day one, you've got no more active income. You just have to play along in your own head. Day one, I got no active income. Now you've got to look really hard, do you not, at your other assets, your investment capital. Where is it and what's it producing for you? And that's going to be where the rubber meets the road. You may not even be close to being needing to have that true epiphany, but do the exercise now with your spouse and play the game. It's day one. We've got no more active income. We're not going to have any more active income. What we've got is what we've got. And now you've got to dig in and do what? What are our real expenses? That's the first thing people will do. I got a budget for the first time in my life. Where is our money really going? Because we've got a certain amount of assets, and these assets right now are producing X, and that X is not meeting Y, which is our lifestyle burn rate. So something's got to give. Either I've got to bring lifestyle burn rate down, or I've got to make my capital investment work harder without taking risk. This is where it comes together. So this exercise of determining your freedom number and being able to keep up with that on a dynamic basis for the rest of your life is very, very important. Very important. Doing the exercise now is something that people have a hard time doing, because as long as you're making money, and you can make money, you can go what I call live to fight another day, because you've been blessed to do it. Most people will not do this exercise. They'll put it off. But eventually, you're going to wish you had done it and done it sooner, because if you do it sooner in life, then you've got a mile marker or mile markers to look at with your spouse and say, where are we? Where are we? I don't care where you are on a percentage basis getting there, but when you have something you can look at, it's kind of like when you have kids growing up and you put their back against the closet door wall. And what do? We put the ruler up and we mark it off and say, Susie, at age 4 was, so many feet and inches tall, and we mark it up. You're doing the same thing here. You have a goal in mind, a number you need to hit, and you say, where am I on that marker? When you're measuring something, that's where you get to it faster. Nobody that makes high income measures it. They just keep their fingers crossed and say, someday I'm liable to get there. And then I have people call me all the time and say, David, I'm 58, I'm 62, and I just don't know. And my financial advisor says, as long as you can keep working, I just keep working. That's not an answer. There's no certainty in that. Understanding what you have wherever you are, whether you're 35 or 45, 55, 62, 65, you've got to have an understanding of what your number is, and then understand the dynamics of how you can make your money work for you at a much higher level than the accumulation model or buying just various products off the wall, whether it's annuities or whole life insurance or ETFs or index funds or whatever. I'm not saying any of those are bad, but they're not ever orchestrated to produce what you really need. That's what I think is the failure of the financial marketplace. They're just incentivized to sell you stuff. And fingers crossed the market does well and that stuff will work out for you. But when the market is up and down and volatile, as we're going to see it for the next decades, this is a time when you really got to be focused on how this works for you and get dialed in. The same way you've done with your own business, where you had to learn it, the operator side, the business side, and you're hands-on with that because if you don't do it, no one else will. Well, same thing with your money. If you're not hands-on doing it, learning about it, no one else is going to do it for you. They'll tell you they can. They'll tell you they'll do their best. But it's your money. It's your life. You have to take the responsibility.